We all have heard Washington say many, many times the governors are in charge of reopening. Thank you very much. So the governors are in charge of reopening. But that doesn't mean the states are on their own. The governors are on their own. We need federal help. We need federal assistance. And they're talking about passing a piece of legislation in Washington this week. It has to be a smart piece of legislation this time. What does that mean? No handouts to greedy corporations, no political pork, and no partisanship. You can't, sometimes, there has to be a time in history when the federal government is willing to stop playing partisan politics. And if it's not through this experience, through this crisis, it will never be. That's the first definition of smart for the federal government. The bill has to fund state and local governments. It has to fund working families. It has to fund state testing and tracing. Everybody talks about testing and tracing. It's up to testing and tracing. It is. No one has done it before. No state has this testing capacity. No state has this tracing capacity. We have to build it. We can do it, but it's a heck of a logistical endeavor, and we need funding to do it. And we need a real economic stimulus. This economy has been damaged through no fault of anyone, through an act of God with this COVID virus. But to get this economy back up and running, we're going to need an intelligent stimulus bill from Washington. When I say no pork barrel, what does that mean? When they pass a piece of legislation in Washington, every senator sees it as their opportunity to bring home bacon to their state. This is supposed to be about the COVID virus and repairing damage from the COVID virus. Keep it about the COVID virus. Last bill, when they did it, they were talking about providing money to states that didn't really have a major COVID problem, so how would the states spend the money? They were talking about building a new state capital in some states because they didn't have enough COVID cases to justify the federal allocation, so they were looking for ways to spend the money. How ludicrous is that, right? This is somebody's money. This is a taxpayer's money. They worked hard. They're willing to help solve the problem of COVID, but keep it about the COVID virus. Second, I understand businesses need to recover. This doesn't have to be a giveaway to the rich millionaires who are doing just fine anyway. And it doesn't have to be a giveaway to big business. It shouldn't be that another episode in history where somehow the rich figure out a way to get more assistance, when it is supposed to be about helping average Americans. And that's the people who really need help here, are the working families, the families that go paycheck to paycheck. They're the ones who are struggling. And the essential workers who have been so great for so long, police officers, firefighters, nurses, school teachers, the people who literally need food. I mean, I have people literally saying, I need food to feed my family. We have unprecedented demand at food banks. Those are the people who really need help. And those are the people who are state government funds. New York State, we know what happened to our economy. We know what our budget looks like. We need $61 billion in federal support, or we will wind up aggravating the situation. Because when you don't fund the state, who does the state fund? The state funds schools, local governments, and hospitals. You really want New York State to turn around and have to cut schools and cut local governments? You know who local governments are? That's police, firefighters. You want me to cut hospitals? Hospitals are the nurses and the doctors who just got us through this, and everyone celebrates as heroes. If you don't fund the state, that's who you're cutting in terms of finances. Now, this is not a red issue, blue issue. Yes, I'm a Democrat. But this is not about politics. I have Democrats, I have Republicans in my state. I have independents, I have short people, I have tall people. New York, we have everything. If you're going to be an effective statewide leader, forget red and blue. It does not work. And every state, red states, blue states, they all need funding. You put the governors in charge. The states are heading the reopening. They need funds to do it. There's an organization called the National Governors Association, NGA, Democratic and Republican governors. It's headed by a Republican governor, Governor Hogan. I'm the vice chairman. I'm a Democrat. We're doing a joint statement today saying states need funding, and not pork barrel funding, and not funding that flows through the states but gets to their special interest. That's not what we want. We want funding to allow us to do our job. Democrats and Republicans working together are going to make this statement, and Washington should listen. The federal bill should also be responsive to working families. What are the problems that working families are facing? They come to me with, I can't pay my rent. I can't pay my mortgage. I'm afraid that once this forbearance period ends, the bank is going to send me 3 months worth of mortgage payments. I'm not going to be able to pay it. I'm afraid that once this forbearance period ends, I'm going to get a bill for 3 months of back rent, and I can't pay it, and I'm going to be evicted. That's what real families are talking about now. They're afraid that they're not going to get their job back. The funeral costs for families, funeral costs, are devastating. That's reality for working families. And you have homeowners in this state, and many of the states affected by COVID, Massachusetts, New Jersey, California, Michigan, same states that have the COVID problem, that just have an additional tax from Washington when they repealed what's called SALT, state and local tax deduction. It was a theft by Washington to increase taxes on certain states. New York is one of them, Massachusetts is one, California is one, and it hurt homeowners because you can't deduct your state and local taxes anymore. It was punitive, it was political, it was wrong. You want to help taxpayers, you want to help homeowners, you want to help the places that were hit by COVID, repeal SALT. And that's what should be done in this bill. And you also have to fund state testing and tracing. We can put together the operation. It's not going to be easy. It's going to entail thousands of people in this state to test and trace. But we need funding from Washington to make that happen. And if you want to be creative and aggressive and smart, which is what we need more than ever, the bill shouldn't just reopen America. Now is a chance to actually reimagine America, okay? You need to stimulate the economy. You need to create jobs. You need to get people back to work. Now is the time to invest in building and rebuilding. Invest in public infrastructure. Build airports, bridges, mass transit. Build a public health infrastructure so we can handle a situation like this next time. The investment in public infrastructure is long overdue. They've talked about this for years. There are dozens and dozens of reports that will talk about the bad shape of our roads and our bridges and how bad our airports are compared to international airports and our haven't built a new airport in the country in 25 years, while all the other countries are building new airports. Now is our time to do it. Every president, Democrats, Republicans, they have all said the same thing. Our public infrastructure is crumbling. We need to create jobs. We should invest in public infrastructure. Now is the time to do it. And if not now, when? If you can't agree on a stimulus for the economy to rebuild this country today, when are you ever going to do it? And last point on this, No bailout, boondoggles. Do not betray the American people again. Why do I say again? Because I went through the 2008 bailout, which was the bailout for the banks after the mortgage crisis. I went through that, and they bailed out the banks. And you know what the banks did? They gave it to their employees, and they got rich. And you know who paid the bill? The American taxpayer paid the bill, and the homeowner paid the bill when the equity in their home disappeared overnight. And everybody said, oh, we can't let the banks fail. We can't let the banks fail. So the taxpayers had to bail out the banks. And the banks turned around and gave bonuses to their executives. I know, because I was the Attorney General of New York at the time. I had to try to clean up the mess. I had to go after the banks for the bailout that Washington gave them, that they were giving in multi-million-dollar bonuses to their executives. The same executives who had created the mortgage scams in the first place. Don't do it again. And I'll tell you today what the new scam is going to be. The new scam is going to be these corporations are going to use this pandemic to lay off workers. That is what they're going to do. They're already saying it. They do these analyst calls where they tell the analysts why their stock value is going to go up. And what they're saying is, we're not going to rehire the same amount of workers. We're going to rehire fewer workers. Our profit margin goes up, our dividend goes up, our stock value goes up. Yeah, except the American workers are left on the beach. That's what they are going to do. Mark my words today. And I want to propose a law that's very simple. Americans first. Americans first. Not America first. Americans first. Protect the worker. Corporation wants a bailout? Corporation wants money? Fine. But if you do not rehire the same number of employees, give the money back. If you do not rehire the same number of employees, no government gift and bailout for you. That's the Americans First law. Very simple, but undeniable. I've spoken to a number of members of the congressional delegation for New York. They're going to propose the Americans First law, no bailout boondoggles. And I'm excited about that. I've also spoken to the congressional delegation about what I just talked to you about, what we need in this bill, what the state and local governments need, what working families need. And I believe our delegation actually has an opportunity to lead the way. So it's not just New York that's tough, smart, united, disciplined, and loving, but we have a federal government that gives us a United States of America that is tough, smart, united, disciplined, and loving.